you.
Thank you, Melanie. How's everybody doing this morning? I hope everyone is ready for a lot of great information. I know COVID-19 snuck up on a lot of us, and we got more questions than we have answers right now. But I'm glad to have a number of different professionals who are focused on St. Louis County and making sure that you are healthy, that you have the exact information that you need, and they're all on one Facebook Live and Zoom meeting this morning. So we will go ahead with our first topic for this afternoon, this morning, is the resources for businesses. Now, I know that we're in a stay-home holding pattern right now. A lot of businesses are still out there going strong. And on top of that, trying to make sure that we have resources for them to move forward and how that looks. Because as the conversation continues about opening up these different cities and in different states, we have to make sure that our businesses are taken care of so we have somewhere to go. So this morning, I have the Black Chamber of Commerce, Veta Jeffery, also the St. Louis Economic Development Program, Ms. Erica Henderson. I have Tracy Jeffries and also Anita on here and Councilwoman Rochelle Gray. But I would like to start with Ms. Veta Jeffery, the Black Chamber of Commerce, to get a good idea of what we are going through and experiencing right now, and better yet, what we have to look forward to moving forward with Black businesses and where we are right now. Good morning, Ms. Veta.
Good morning. Happy Saturday to you. And thank you, Ms. Jones. I'm excited to be here this morning.
Now, what are we looking at as far as moving forward with business? I mean, what are we kind of experiencing right now? I know with all the stay-at-home orders we have going on, how is that affecting our businesses? And better yet, what are we doing to make sure that they are able to take care of themselves moving forward?
So that's a great question, and that's a huge challenge, especially in the African-American community. We are expecting anywhere from a 15 to 25% loss of Black business owners as we come out through COVID-19. And that's something that's going to have a great economic impact on our communities. And so what we're trying to do, we're doing several things. We're trying to make certain that we help them tool up in preparation. There's some great information that you'll get, for example, from Erica Henderson from County Executive Page today about supports that are going on. There's some supports that are taking place in the city as well, and how we can wrap our arms around our communities and make certain that we don't lose our mom and or pop shops, our sole proprietors, our business owners, our barbers and beauticians that aren't able to earn income. Some people are trying everything that they can to redirect themselves and recreate themselves so that they can be positioned to bring forth the services and products that we'll need coming out of this. But that's a very difficult thing to do. So what our focus is, how are we going to recover from this and give our community financial dignity in coming out of that? So we've got a lot of resources. I don't know if you want me to go into that now or if you want to go to Erica, but we've got a lot of resources we're trying to get in front of them to help with this, Ms. Isis.
Okay, well, how about this? We'll go ahead and check in with Erica and then come back, because again, I want everyone to know that there are resources available to you as African-American businesses. And then on top of that, having that idea as just general people who are just looking for these places to shop at. You know, we have to know exactly what our businesses are going through. Erica, the St. Louis Economic Development Program, basically, what are you all having shape right now and moving forward that are going to be able to help these businesses move forward as well?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Information. I am with the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership, and we have created a small business resource loan fund, which is designed to assist our small businesses. So we want to make sure that our neighborhood businesses which are the nexus of our communities, are properly serviced and have the ability to access resources. We know that in African American communities, access to capital and opportunities is diminished. And when issues as a pandemic, it further exacerbates the inequities in our community. And so we are working very hard to target these communities, minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and foreign-owned businesses to make sure that they are sustainable and resilient after this global crisis that we are experiencing. On our site at stlpartnership.com, we have comprise all of the regional and global initiatives that will support your businesses. So whether it's grants or loans or resources that are readily available, we ask that you tap into our website to find those things, and then I can work with you directly to guide you on a path that fits your immediate business needs. So the Small Business Resource Program also has a hotline where you can call in to say, this is my business, these are my immediate challenges, and this is where I need assistance. It is 314-615-1777, and it's open today until noon, and open every other day from 8 to 7 p.m. But again, it is designed to make sure that our businesses are plugged in, they know where the right information is, and they are not paying for services that are being offered for free. So we can assist you with identifying loan dollars, grant dollars, and assistance with completing your P3 or PPP applications with your large banks, smaller banks, and CDFIs who have committed to ensuring that our people are connected to the resources that are available to them.
Because the one thing that I'm finding, especially with our businesses, we already had issues before trying to get loans and trying to get assistance. So this pandemic is it's basically shown a nice little light on where we are financially with our businesses. And I'm glad that, you all are there for. Now, how many people have you been in contact with in the sense of, how this has been have people been able to get in contact with you, or are you finding that, again, that we're not quite sure how to link into these type of services?
So I think it's both and. So we have had over 800 people to apply to our program. This program we are a regional agency, so it services both city and county. Okay. And then we have been targeting our most economically undervalued neighborhoods. So it's like, when I help you, help the next business. So we need everyone's business to thrive in order for us to be a sustainable region. And so share the information that you are receiving, and share it even though you may not know if that person needs the information or not. There's so many different resources that are happening, and the resources are changing daily. So you want to make sure that you are plugged into the right people like Veta and others who are on the call today to make sure that you are aware of the most recent information. In addition to that, we are offering some technical assistance training because a lot of our businesses are missing the back of the house, the systems that need to be in place to ensure the longevity and success of businesses. Making sure that your taxes are current or helping you get on a payment plan, making sure that you have a business license and that you are in good standing with both the county and the state. And some of those challenges are plaguing our smaller businesses. So we want to make sure that we walk businesses through that process to ensure their success going forward.
Absolutely. And I know that a lot of businesses, whether you personally have one or if you have a family member or a friend that's kind of going through it, I've spoken to a number of different business owners who I'm totally amazed that they're still kind of moving forward, especially in this economy. But I want to make sure that we continue to pass that information on. And again, we will have a lot of these resources and information directly, like the numbers that Erica has given you, and as Veta will give you as well, St. Louis and St. Louis County, that you can go ahead and contact. So please make sure that if you don't even use the information, that you pass it on to businesses that really do need the resources. Now, Veta, back to you with the Black Chamber of Commerce. What basic, for those of you who don't know what the Black Chamber of Commerce does, can you break that down just a little bit for us, Veta?
Absolutely. Chambers function to help promote, grow, and advocate on behalf of their members. So the focus of a Black Chamber is to make certain, and Erica does a phenomenal job at what she does. And I love that. I'm always excited when I get to speak alongside of her. but I want to use this to make a point. Most organizations that function through our cities, our government, our state, our local, federal, and government entities are minority driven. But we also have a benefit of having singular focused entities. So we have a Hispanic chamber that can focus just in the interest of Hispanic members. We have an Asian chamber that can focus on behalf of their members. But a Black chamber gets to focus specifically on the interest of the Black community. So we're advocating on behalf of our members to make certain that they have a seat at the table when the table's being set, so that when we're talking about economic development, when we're talking about what's going on in the community, when we're talking about policy that needs to be written, so that as monies trickle down, that we have enough money being trickled to our Black businesses first. Those are the kinds of things that we get to stand in behalf of. Another thing that I think is important that we're doing right now, you mentioned banking. And so I was on the phone with the regional director for Regions Bank. Regions got 50,000 applications for the payroll protection program off the bat. If they're getting, Erica mentioned all the technical support that our businesses need. If we don't have our house in order and they've got 50,000 applications, we're not going to get a chance to get looked at, because they're going through quickly trying to find out, did they meet these guidelines? Do they have this in place, this in place? And if they have to move it to the side because demand is so high, chances are they're not going to get back to come talk to you about what you need to fix so that your business gets funding. So our chamber is offering also that technical support that's needed. There is no charge. What we're doing is just trying to make certain we utilize all of those relationships across banks to make certain that our members, that the people that come through, get funded. And we've done a great job of doing that. Our banks are overwhelmed because the need is so high. And so what we're trying to do is educate and inform our members, meaning the community, our Black community, as to what's needed for them to get ahead in this. There are a number, I mentioned earlier, there are a number of supports that we bring to the table as a chamber. One of the first things that we made certain was set up, and it's going to sound a little interesting, but coming behind Ferguson, we found the need for it. We have a bartering page. Right now, businesses don't have the monies that they need, but they do still stand in need of things. So they can go in, make deposits into the bartering page, and then pull something completely separate out. So I was on the phone last night with a small business, and they are in need of legal services. They happen to be builders. So what they're going to do is they're going to put on our bartering page some of their free business. They'll come build something. They'll build a room for you. What they're looking for is an attorney. They need some legal services, and it doesn't have to be an even exchange. What they're doing is putting in equal value and taking out equal value. So that's one thing that we're doing, just trying to make certain that we keep people going while they're short of funds. The technical support that I mentioned, we're actually helping people redirect and retool. We've connected some of our suppliers. One of the things that we've got to do, if you've got equipment that you're offering right now or something that's going to be in high demand, so if you've got PPEs, if you're making masks, and they're certifiable, if you've got the face shields, if you've got hand sanitizer. But another thing that we're trying to also do is we're helping business. There's going to be a huge need for cleanup. In order for us to come out of this, our metro transit systems, our buses, all of them will have to go to a 24-hour deep cleaning. Right now, we don't have enough businesses that are in place to do that. So we're helping businesses get tooled so that they can now offer the services that are going to be needed to go through that. Our focus as the Black Chamber is to be the first stop for all things Black business. That means If you want to know what's going on with Erica, but you've not had a chance to meet Erica, you come to the chamber. We have a link that's going to take you directly to her. Miss Daphne Daphne Moore is serving that same purpose for St. Louis City. You come to the chamber's website, you get a direct link to go to them. There are a number of services, the Urban League, Grace Hills Women Business Center, all of them. Miss Tracey Jeffries is on here, the work that she does in the community. Direct links to all of the services that you can get so that we can have that one-stop shop and make certain that we know where to go to get. Our website is www.hbcstl.com. That's www.hbcstl.com. We're offering free membership because of COVID-19. We want to make certain that people have access to everything that they need. So the free membership code is COVID-19. So they can log on with that and it gives them all the opportunities. But we do a lot of training support. We had the president of the U.S. Black Chamber out of DC, and we also had all of our leaders, Congressman Clay, we had Senator Brian Williams on, but we've been being able to get information and send it direct. All of that is video recorded and placed on our website so people can have constant access. If you can't tune in during the day, it's there for you.
Now, one thing that I want people to make sure they understand, COVID-19 didn't come, it came unexpected, but this is the time, whether you're a small business and you think that you're small, or you're a larger business, to get your house in order, to really take these resources seriously and let you know that these people are out here who definitely have the information that you need. Because the one thing that I'm finding with us is that we have a tendency to believe that we can do it all. And unfortunately, for growth, you have to be able to include others into your, into your world, so to speak, to make sure that you have everything that you need. Because unfortunately, you can't do everything by yourself. And I know that is a personal thing that we all have a pride in, but at some point in time, you have to kind of push that to the side and make sure that your house is in order. And when you have services like Veta and like with Erica, and as we're getting ready to talk to Tracey Jeffries and Veta, you really have to utilize them to become bigger and better, especially if you're into growth and if you want to build your business, no matter how small or how big it is, make sure that you contact the Black Chamber of Commerce and get as much information as you need. Veta, did you have anything else you wanted to kind of touch on that?
Well, I just want to say, one of our programs is called Your Supporting Cast, and it's right in line with what you say. We try to be everything. We make apple pies, and then we try to design the website, and we try to write all the bylaws, and we just think we can do all. And so what we're doing is partnering with our Black professionals to make certain that we surround all of our Black businesses with a 9-point team, an accountant, an attorney, a marketing professional, an IT professional, a banker, a financial service professional, an insurance professional, a virtual admin, and an HR professional. That way, if you're making widgets, we want you to focus on making your widgets. And we want this team to help you stay bankable. When we go to banks and we want loans to do what we know, what we need, we have our hat in our hand begging because we know we've not done our taxes for 3 years. We know we don't have, we've not set up bylaws. We don't have our articles of incorporations updated, or we've got 5 different fictitious accounts. We filed taxes under one and we're trying to get everything else on, and it just doesn't jive well. And so we're here to walk alongside and make sure that our businesses can walk up proudly when they come into a bank, or when they're coming to a financial professional, or when they're sitting down for one of Miss Erica's grants, their house is in order and they don't have to worry about what they've not taken care of. So
that is absolutely perfect. And I hope that St. Louis County really does take advantage of the resources in that manner. Tracey Jeffries, how are you doing this morning?
I'm great. Thank you so much, Isis. Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone.
So good to see you. What are we looking at moving forward? How can we help our businesses out here? What services?
Well, let me start by saying that great job, Veta. She talked about information in regards to what the Black Chamber does, and it was long overdue for us to get a Black Chamber here in St. Louis. And I remember she worked tirelessly to get the organization going. She's doing an excellent job. the St. Louis County Economic Development Partnership. Hey, Erica. You know, we work together on new market tax credit initiatives and getting urban community developments out. So I have relationship with both of these ladies, and we all work together, succinctly together in improving our community. So as CEO of Capital Consulting Services, we specialize in management consulting and economic development services. So we work with a lot of the North County communities and small businesses to help them get off the ground. And so one of what we've done for COVID-19 in response to it is partnered with SCORE, and we're providing facilitations and trainings to organizations and businesses to help them going. As a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Inc. And Gamma Omega Chapter, we have responded to COVID as putting out some of the training initiatives to help businesses going. So one of the areas that we have focused on is crisis management planning. So, you know, before you're getting into idea of looking for funding, you need to understand how much you need. And so that's very important, because a lot of times with small businesses, they don't keep proper records. And I was a SBA women's business counselor for 8 years, and Veta and I was actually together. Veta served on the board, and so we were part of that initiative when it first started getting out here and getting known. And it's hard for that to happen. And so yes, the fear is that some of the Black businesses will go unnoticed. So some of the questions they should ask: how much should I apply for? What is needed for me to obtain capital, and where do I find the capital I need? And the whole goal of this in the small business community is to move away from the pandemic. Everyone's focused on the pandemic right now, but right now is the time to turn a crisis into an opportunity. Create a plan and then implement an action plan after and during the pandemic. So there's a calculator. There's an impact calculator out here. It's by FAIR.com, F-A-R-E, FAIR.com/impact calculator. I'll be happy to get it out there. And it's a free impact related projection that shows you how much money you made before and what you have lost during COVID, and then it allows you to have an idea of what you should apply for. That way, when you go and you contact a partnership, if you contact the chamber, or you're looking at the PPP program, and you're talking to one of the SBA certified banking institutions, you know exactly, you have an idea of what you need. Don't let anyone tell you what you need. You identify with what you need yourself. Be proactive in COVID about your business. Be serious about it. Act as if it is your child. So that's one of the initiatives we want to go out. So other things that are out here, again, the Paycheck Protection Program, the funding ran out, but now it's back in. Some of those criteria, a lot of people think independent contractors are not available. They are. Are not eligible. They are. Sole proprietors are eligible as well. And so those are the things that a lot of times they say, well, I'm independent, I shouldn't look at that. I have an attorney who was telling me that she was operating on a draw and she wasn't going to apply. She applied and she received some funding for it. And so don't let that be a scenario where you think you're going to be turned away. It's simple. The requirements are payroll tax returns, lease agreements, utility bills, and any loan agreements that you currently have. And the form is called SBA 2483. And so those are the things that you go to SBA.gov and look for a list of the banking institutions in that area. Another resources we want to tap into is, like someone mentioned, beauty professionals and fashion and barbers. There's a few grants out there for that as well. And so those grants, I like to give out the links real quick. It's called Beauty Changes Lives, beautychangeslives.org. They're getting out $1,000 grant. There is probeauty.org. It's a relief funding that's giving out grants for beauties and professionals. And then Beauty and Vision Awards is for hairdressers at heart. They're offering up to $10,000. This is a very huge one for a combination of professionals. It's like your Clairol, Sebastian, and Diane, all of those have partnered together to pull those resources together to operate grants. These are still active as I checked, because you have to check every day. These grants are moving, the people are running out of money, and so you got to move fast. So this is not the time for small businesses. Understand, as people, as women, as Black businesses, we focus only on our business a lot of times, and sometimes in this crisis, we can go and hover into a corner and put our head down. This is not the time to put your head down. Get out here. There are resources here. These ladies that just talked before me, they know where it's at. It's a lot of calls coming, people coming up on the call. They know what to do, and they should take advantage of it. If you can't get money, get some of the advertising. You know, Yelp is offering free advertising credits. Take advantage of that. For independent-owned restaurants and bars, Yelp is offering free advertising. The Council of Fashion Designers of America, for all you boutiques and designers out here, there's 100,000 fashion business industry. $2 million is out there. Applications are due May 2nd, today. Get on there right now and apply for that. Again, we talked about Beauty Changes Lives. Oh, there's another one. In partnership with Verizon, the digital fundraising advocacy platform, Hello Alice, is offering emergency grants up to $10,000. That is still active. Google is offering $340 million in advertising grants. I will get all over that. I'm telling you, for small businesses and medium-sized businesses, it's a credit that automatically goes to your Google ad account. So take advantage of those. And then there's Facebook, who has their free advertising now. So if you can't get money, I would say as a retail industry, if you think you're you know, or you feel that you really wasn't impacted and you just need to get yourself out there, keep yourself out there, because now it's the technology that you need to, time and technology you need to do that.
Tracy, all that information is perfect. And I love the fact that, again, we have resources like yourself from the Black Chamber of Commerce, and of course, Erica with St. Louis Economic Development Partnership. So St. Louis County, please utilize these services. And as I see folks who are coming on to Facebook, I thank you for being a part of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated's Gamma Omega Chapter's Town Hall meeting. We have some incredible people here who are in making sure that you're informed, that you know what we're going to be doing moving forward, especially in St. Louis County. But if you have any questions, just go ahead and type them in. Go ahead and type them in so we can go ahead and make sure that we are getting specifically what it is that you need, St. Louis County. Okay, share this feed as well, because I'm quite sure there is a lot of more information that's coming up. We're going to be touching on census and voting. We're going to be touching on the health aspect of testing, also our healthcare moving forward, and also our family resources, all of this great information specifically for you, St. Louis County. So with that said, I want to thank again Erica Henderson, Ms. Tracey Jeffries, and also Ms. Veta. I appreciate you all with all the great information, and we will make sure that we continue to send those links out to keep people informed of what services they have. Ladies, I thank y'all so much for being a part of the conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
But what's so fun now is that I actually get to speak with Councilwoman Rochelle Gray going into this next topic here. We have the census and voting. Now, I know these are probably two contentious positions in the African-American community. We tend to think that our vote doesn't count. I don't know if you have, like I have about maybe 4 or 5 census letters at your home right now that you probably have not filled out. But these are important pieces of moving forward after COVID-19. This is going to be with us for a while. But the one thing that I'm very particular about is also really reminding people that all politics is local. I don't care if you're talking about Trump or anyone else, it is local. And it depends on you being able to recognize and know who your local constituents are. And better yet, how they can help you in your everyday life, because those are the people who are basically on the front line, making sure that you get all of the resources and all the things that you need to make sure that you have a successful and progressive and positive life. And that specifically right now is Councilwoman Rochelle Gray. How are you doing, beautiful?
Good. Oh, thank you. Good morning to everyone. And thank you for having me on the call today. I appreciate it.
We have also Yolonda Henderson, Joan Hubbard from Gamma Omega, and Joan Hubbard. I'm sorry, Joan. How are you doing this morning? But Councilwoman, what exactly are we looking at moving forward? I mean, you were on the front lines. You were in Jefferson City a lot more than most of us. But what are we up against moving forward? And why is the census and voting so important?
Well, first, let me just step back real quick. to talk about the Small Business Relief Program. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
If it's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, real quick. This is a program specific to our individual council districts. So if you live in my district, particularly, it's coming out of the CARES Act funding, and we have grants, that we're going to administer, but you have to make sure my office gets a copy of your application. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that it will be found through the portal, which is stlcorona.com. And I'll stop there.
No, you're good. You're definitely good. And again, Renee, we will post those resources as well. But what are we kind of facing moving forward, Councilwoman?
Yes, with the census and of course with voting. Very, very important two issues. I'll start with the census. The numbers are what determines what funding we get from the federal government. So it's very important that you take that form, fill it out, or go online and fill it out. And you can do it for your entire family. It doesn't have to be individual persons in your home. You can fill it out for your entire family who lives in your home. It's a simple questionnaire. It's similar to a survey. It only takes about, 10 minutes at the most. Yeah. You also have now until October 31st to fill it out. The census takers will not start coming to your home until later this summer due to the pandemic. But if you don't want someone coming to your home, that's why it's a good idea to mail it in or fill it out online. And then my husband here, State Representative Gray, he has a couple of more things he wants to mention about it whenever you're ready for him. But it is, again, just very important.
No, it's extremely important. And Mr. Gray, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, and you, and thanks for having me on. I'm just here just to let people know the importance of filling out the census. Just like Rochelle said, it's a questionnaire, and we had 9 questions. And once we fill this out, it determines how much federal funds each state will get. So if we fill it out, it's $1,300 per year, but turns out to be $13,000 since the census is ran every 10 years. So I'm just basically here to try to get people to know the importance of filling it out. And you can go online at my2020census.gov, or you can call at 844-330-2020. And like I said, we only have to do this every 10 years, so we're just asking for everybody's participation.
No.
And thank you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate, again, you both being on here to just confirm the fact that, again, the census is something, y'all, that, you've seen the commercials, you know to a certain degree what it states. But I know a lot of us don't want to be, for whatever reason, identified. You think that it may be something that's used against you later on. It's not that deep. It really isn't. It's just the point of where the monies go. We always wonder about, well, why don't we have this service in this area? And why don't we have this in this area? And why don't we have, this hospital or this? Because, we're not counted. And if your name is not counted in that role, like back in school, you weren't present. So, we didn't have to kind of contend with you in that regard. So you're overlooked in a lot of different ways financially, especially with your schools and especially with your services, because you're basically not counted. And that's one of the reasons why the census is so important, and one of the reasons why your vote is so important. We have Committee Woman Yolonda Henderson on the line with us. How are you doing, Ms. Henderson?
Good morning. How are you?
Last and highly favored over here. So happy to be in the number, but what is your take on moving forward with census and voting?
Well, I know I did. I just filled mine out, and I see that it was very easy to fill out. And I know out here in Jennings, our numbers are very low. So we do have to encourage one another. Everybody needs to just go next door and say, hey, did you fill it out? It only take a few minutes. You need any help? I think we need to, you know, make that extra step. Putting out signs, that's good and dandy, but we do need to knock on doors. We do need the money. We don't need to leave that money on the table.
No, and that's the one thing that I don't think people take into consideration. It's funny that you say that with the yard signs and everything else like that. It's a nice reminder of sorts. But to put it in more practical terms, say for instance, you're trying to figure out why, let's just say for giggles, Chesterfield has more, you know, money going towards their public school system,
right?
Or, you know, and why we might not have books for our kids or certain programs in our schools. It's because of this, correct?
That is correct. And that's why I said we need to probably just knock on doors. The census will be coming around, but you know, this, you know, I ask everybody all the time, hey, did you fill it out? Did you fill it out? Oh, I'm going to do it. I said, girl, come on, let's fill it out. Let's get it in the mail.
Especially now that everyone's at home, don't not really have anything to do.
No excuses.
It's a good time. Just take a moment to fill it out. Federal funds are important. We complain about some of the things we don't have, such as testing, the testing for the COVID. Federal funds assist with what happens in your community. And if they don't know how many people you have, you can't get the money.
No, and that's a perfect point, Councilwoman. And I know that we as African Americans have a certain fear of government. We have a certain fear of the health. You know, we just basically have certain fears about those, and I thoroughly understand that. But one thing that you definitely have to understand, St. Louis County, is that no one is coming to save you. Okay, no one. In the sense of those entities, in the sense of we have some services, we have things, but this is solely on you. Now, one of the reasons, I know a lot of folks like to go back and say, well, our ancestors died, but they really did. They sit here and have the right to vote. And then when you just kind of just say, well, it doesn't matter, but it may not matter in the sense of, you know, presidents and things of that nature, but on your local scale, it does matter. Because that's where our local dollars come from. That's why your streets are tore up. That's why your kids ain't getting everything that they basically need, because you have not been counted, period. And when you don't vote, that is basically apathy in its best sense, of you not being able to sit here and say that I matter and I count, because you do. Contrary to what the rest of the world may be telling you, you count and you matter. So make sure that you continue that. And then better yet, if you're one of those tech savvy folks, if you don't want to basically go and just, you know, do the handwritten form, I know a lot of us don't like the whole snail mail situation, go ahead and go online. You can do that at my2020census.gov. It's really easy. That's what I did. You know, I went ahead and filled it out, took less than 10 minutes, and it was done. You know, while you're sitting in the house doing everything else, playing Candy Crush, watching Love and Hip Hop, doing all these other different things. No, seriously, you know I'm not playing.
You're right.
Because it's kind of like, you know, take those few minutes, get that done. That's one less thing you guys sit here and worry about. You so quick to take care of your taxes because you know you need that refund back. We shouldn't have to pay you to take care of your community, and better yet, yourself, and to be counted in this. So let me get off my soapbox for a second.
Let me. I want to also mention, keep in mind that information is not shared. Right. In fact, it is illegal for them to share that information other than the numbers. But none of your personal information is shared with anyone, not even the government.
So keep that in mind when you take that 10 minutes and fill out the census. Now, Ms. Joan Hubbard, how are you doing, beautiful? Turn your microphone on.
Unmute.
There you go. It's probably on the screen there. There you go.
Good morning to all of you.
Good morning.
Let me just say that I'm happy to have this opportunity to talk to you about what is very personal and passionate, what I'm very personally passionate about, and that's voting. But I want to start with the census. My job in the sorority is chair of the Connections Committee, and that's public policy as it relates to Gamma Omega. Our involvement in voting, census taking, that kind of thing.
Right.
Let me start by saying, also let me apologize if I repeat some of the things that have already been said. Please forgive me, because I think that what has already been said is so important that it is crucial that you have the opportunity to hear it twice. So let me start by saying that as chair of the Connections Committee, we as members of this community have a lot of problems to solve. The first one is the census. We talked about the importance of the census in determining the lives of the level of federal dollars that flow to our communities, as well as the number of representatives that we have in DC. If you will remember, 10 years ago, because of our level of participation, we lost a legislator. We don't want to see that happen again. We know what happens in DC if we don't have the appropriate representation. I have also heard the comments about, I don't want the government knowing my business.
Mm-hmm.
But I am here to tell you.
Know your business.
There are a whole lot of people who know your business. What we want, and these are the people who are willing and very capable of taking away your civil liberties and doing you harm economically. This is already occurring. We can counteract that. We're not going to get rid of that. We can counteract that by completing the census information. This would give government agencies and community and civic organizations the official, documented information needed to ensure your community, our community, has its share of funding for projects such as, we need SNAP, we need Medicaid, we need school lunches, schools, roads, and other programs. We need that. So we cannot stress to you too strongly, please complete the census. Not only that, make sure your family and friends complete the census. Moving on, the next issue that we have is voting. We need to focus, as has been said, on local elections. And the first issue that's on the table right now is Clean Missouri, Amendment 1. If you remember, in 2018, 62% of voters statewide, not just in St. Louis County, St. Louis City, but statewide, passed a law to outlaw partisan gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is a process that designs the geographical boundaries to favor one party or class of citizens of another. 62% of the voters passed a law to outlaw that. In spite of that, this week, there is a House Laws Committee that voted to overturn that amendment, to overturn that. They have some language in the bill that would allow for the most extreme gerrymandering in the nation. We expect this is likely to come up on the floor next week. We're asking everyone to call their legislator to say that, to vote no on any attempt to reverse the legislation for Clean Missouri, which gets us to voting, our legislators. There's a lot of activity that's going on right now around voting because of COVID and the requirements, the guidelines for social distancing and those kinds of things. Also, we are very much aware of the photos that appear from Wisconsin. We know how that went down, and we don't like that.
What happened exactly, Joan?
No, we don't. Gamma Omega, quite some time ago, took a position of support for early voting. We were very fortunate also in getting the St. Louis County Council to adopt a resolution supporting early voting as a result of our initiative. Now, and we've got that on the table in Jeff City. There is a bill that's out there in support of early voting. Has not had a hearing, has not been acted upon, but the framework is there. The ACLU, NAACP, League of Women Voters Missouri filed suit a week or so ago against Ashcroft to implement no excuse absentee voting. That's where, don't know where that is, you know, that's in the court. I'm understanding that a number of residents of St. Louis County who are 60 and above have received absentee ballots or absentee applications for voting. And so, you know, although we support early voting, we support all voting. So from the point of view of Gamma Omega, we would just suggest that we would encourage you to go ahead and follow through on those.
Okay.
Then we also have to remember those individuals who are less than 60. We want them to vote also. So at the end of the day, we are advocates of voting, whether it be early absentee, whether it be early voting, or our traditional Tuesday only voting. We want voting. And so we cannot stress to you too strenuously the importance of voting.
Now, Joan.
What we're asking, okay. No, I was just gonna say.
Okay, go ahead.
What we're asking from the point of view of Gamma Omega, we would ask everyone in the sound of my voice today to write a letter or call Governor Parson. We are at a point now where we think that any kind of legislation on voting is going to come down to an executive order on the part of the governor. We don't see this happening in the legislature. So we would ask everyone, ask Governor Parson, either for early voting or absentee voting, because really we think people should have an option. You should not be limited to what day of the week you have to vote or what process you have to vote. You should have the opportunity for in-person voting. It's not too much to ask. And so with that, I think I need to shut up. I see Isa smiling.
You are perfect. You are perfect. I mean, but that's all instrumental because we don't really take into consideration. And as to make it really sharp and plain, you know, we all think that for a lot of us that our vote is not important. But on a local scale, I can't keep on beating it down. It really means everything because if your voice is not counted, y'all, we don't get the funding we need. We don't get the help that we need. And then we want to sit here and cry about it later on. Yolanda, you had something you wanted to touch on.
Yes, Joan, I totally agree with you. I would like everyone to absentee due to the COVID-19. But for everyone that doesn't know, the April 7th election was moved to June the 2nd. And that's an off time. Some people thought it was over with. And I say, no. So on March the 18th, the governor ordered Ashcroft to move it. So they moved it. So right now, like she stated, it's all colored applications for absentees went to 60 or, you know, over. Some people had already voted for the April election. what's going on, there are 3 ways for the people to absentee: through mail, through email, or through fax. That's the application. It goes to the Board of Election. And just remember, we're talking about St. Louis County here. The number is 615-1800 if they would like to ask for an application to be filled out. They're going on the 1st and the 2nd degree. There's 6 reasons on the applications to fill out. But right now with the COVID in place, I say, hit incapacitated, because right now we cannot go door to door, asking people to support you due to the 6 feet from each other. So the absentee is very important. Voting is very important. And I really hope that the ACU and everyone else get this passed, that everybody can be able to absentee. This is very serious. We can't take this COVID-19 lightly, but I don't want that to be an excuse to say, hey, I didn't vote because of the COVID-19. No, you have another option. Again, there's 3 ways: fax, email, or through mail. It's like the same thing going back to the census. You're at home, just take care of it.
No, you're perfectly right. Yolanda, and I guess that's the thing. It's how important is your livelihood, is your community,
your health,
and your health. All these things are pursed into these 2 things of the census and the voting. Go ahead, Joan.
I was just wanting to add, oftentimes we think of things as immediate. Everything we talked about today, the census, the voting, Clean Missouri, this is about preparing for your future. This is preparing for the future for your children and your grandchildren. And we have an obligation to prepare a better world for our future than we have now. A lot of the things that are going on with COVID, we can't do anything about, but we can change how things are looked at as we move forward.
No, absolutely. And Rochelle, you had a point.
Something going back to what we mentioned about the census is local voting. So as Yolanda mentioned, June is your local elections, and it's important to vote. People only sometimes want to vote in your presidential, but your local elections is what provides, again, your street services. That's who determines what happens in your community more so than your presidential. All elections, let me just say that. Vote every time you have the opportunity to vote, because it's going to affect you in some manner. People have won an election and people have lost an election by 1 vote. So everybody's vote is important. And again, your local elections are almost more important than any election that you participate in.
Now that is, I can't stress it enough. I really can't, family. Moving forward, a lot of things are going to change. Everybody thinks that once we come out of this, it's just going to go back to normal. You're going to be faced with the fact that, number 1, COVID-19 is still running rampant. And you're going to be faced with the fact that maybe your house is not as in order as it needs to be. So utilizing these tools, which are voting and census that we've had along for a long time, everybody thinks, well, voting is not important. It doesn't change anything. No, it changes a lot of things when you utilize it, just like with any other tool. So use it to your advantage. And I know that sometimes as African Americans, we don't think forward in the sense of preparing ourselves and preparing our children, preparing our future. We don't think about it in the sense of a legacy. But these are the things that I know that my grandparents passed on to me, and the importance. My father laying back in his bedroom right now. These things are important because, again, it substantiates us as individuals and citizens of a community that want to grow and to build. Now, if you want your neighborhood to stay stagnant, you want nothing to ever change in there, and you cool with the conditions that you are right now, cool, don't even worry about it. But if for some strange reason you want better for your children, and better yet, you want better for yourself, please make sure you sit there and fill out that census. Please make sure that you take every action that you possibly can to make sure that you vote, whether you can do it by absentee, whether you can do it by phone, whether you can do it by fax, or whether you need to change the information up. No, it's not convenient at this time, especially if you're you're staying at home and you can't get out. But do not use that as an excuse not to do this, because if anything that we get caught up into later on, it's going to be on you. And I'm putting it on you personally, because at some point in time, you have to realize that if we do not take responsibility for our own lives as an African-American community, we are going to die by that one pose of you not being able to take one simple action. I'm sorry. But
I would like to say, first of all, get registered to vote.
Let's try that. Let's try that first.
Get registered to vote first. If you have any more questions, 615-1800. That's the St. Louis County Board of Elections.
Okay, and everybody, I know that we have a chat on the side of our Zoom. If you do not mind putting the information that you have in there, because they are requesting it on Facebook. If you have any information, any links, any telephone numbers, if you look to your chat line, you should see it on your screen to your right-hand side. If you can put any information that needs to be conveyed to our Facebook viewers, I'll go ahead and post that so they have those resources available to them. That's Erica, Veta, Yolanda, also, you know, Rochelle. If you have any more information, if you have any links or numbers, please put that there, and I will make sure that Facebook has it. But we are on to our next topic. Go ahead, Joan. We're gonna finish.
Okay. I just want to wrap it up. I'm going to shut up. We have 3 things that we want you to do today that's going to come out of census and voting.
Yes, ma'am.
1 is complete your census. Get your brother-in-law, mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and lady down the street to complete the census.
Oh, that's right.
Number 2 is contact your state legislator and tell them to vote no on any effort to repeal Amendment 1. Now that is tied into the census, because that's going to determine the boundaries that would be used for the selection of legislators. So that has already passed in 2018. So tell them to find something else to work on and leave clean Missouri alone.
Yeah,
okay. And then finally, make sure
Joan,
make sure that you vote. Call Governor Parsons. Write Governor Parsons. Tell him to issue an executive order or whatever he has to do to get early voting, absentee, no excuse absentee voting, or whatever, but something in addition to our traditional Tuesday only voting. We need that. And I'll shut up.
Isis, I have one thing to say.
Yes, ma'am.
Get out and vote.
Exactly.
No, ladies, you have been perfect, and that is the best information to have forward. You are absolutely right. And stop allowing people to move the goalpost. Okay, so get out there and vote. Get your census taken care of as well, St. Louis. Moving forward, we are talking about your health. Now, I know there are a lot of questions moving forward with testing, vaccines, a lot of questions out there. I know personally myself, I wasn't able to get a test when it first came out. A lot of us have not been able to. So where are we with that? And with that said, we have County Executive Sam Page on the call with us. Sam, how are you doing this morning?
Good morning.
Good
morning. Thanks for having me.
So happy to have you here and part of the conversation.
Good morning. Well, thanks for having me. And of course, St. Louis County's been busy over the past few months responding to this worldwide pandemic and how it's affected our community. This really is 3 crises. It is a public health crisis, a humanitarian crisis, and then an economic crisis. And that's just how we have approached it, working very closely with our county council members to provide the right response. Our Emergency Operations Center has been operational now for over 2 months, directed by our public health response to make sure we get the resources where we need. We knew early on that this would be a question of equity and would hit our underrepresented and underserved areas the hardest. So the first thing that I did was I asked Dr. Jason Purnell to serve as a technical advisor to our public health response. And he was very happy to do that, and has helped coordinate a regional response with St. Louis County and St. Louis City. In addition, we focused our resources on the most impacted areas, and we worked very hard to get more testing locations, especially in North St. Louis County. And thanks to the help of the St. Louis County Council, on Tuesday of this week, we're able to pass an appropriation of the stimulus funds and begin to get to work providing those services urgently into the affected communities. So we immediately started hiring contact tracers, individuals who have a responsibility working for the county to communicate with and contact anyone who was exposed to someone with a COVID-19 infection, and get everyone in contact with public health to advise them on what they need to watch for symptoms and whether or not they should be quarantined. In addition, we have placed an order for more tests. We know that getting through this means getting more testing in our region, and especially in the most affected areas. And we're doing that. The bid for more testing will close on Monday, and we will have more lines of opportunity working collectively with our federally qualified health centers, our private labs, and our health systems. Up until a few weeks ago, the health systems were leading the response to testing, competing very aggressively in the national environment of an extreme testing shortage. And you read that anytime you read about this anywhere in the country. St. Louis County is going to compete aggressively to try to get those tests right here in our community, because we know testing and isolation is the path forward. We're working with our Department of Human Services on the humanitarian response. We have a contract with area hotels. So anyone who is unhoused, who tests positive, can quarantine in one of our hotels while they're recovering, so they are not out in the community trying to shelter when they don't have a place to shelter. And after the quarantine is over, then we move them to one of our homeless shelters until we can transition them into more permanent housing. So in addition to what we're doing with the humanitarian response, we are also working on the economic response. As Councilwoman Walton Gray mentioned earlier today, we have a small business recovery program, and that was announced yesterday, where small businesses who have been affected by the stay-at-home order can apply for a grant with St. Louis County. And this grant is to help them with operational costs while they were closed, or any costs associated with returning to being open and serving the community. We understand that we were forced to make a very difficult decision between protecting lives and livelihoods, and we're going to try and find the right path forward, but always moving on the side of public safety. We also have an economic rescue team that is working very closely together to try and take care of some of those gaps between federal programs and county programs. And I'd be glad to try and take some questions.
Well, Sam, I guess the question I have too is, like, with those pieces in play, especially with African Americans being affected disproportionately with this disease, with this virus, basically, what do we kind of, like, what are we kind of doing in the sense of making sure that that aspect of our community is really focused on? I know that there was a question of initially areas that, especially in St. Louis County, that were not being tested. I know that has changed completely since then. Can you speak on that just a little bit?
Yeah, so when this first came about, the first testing location opened up in West County. They had a place that was ready to go. Within a few days, Christian was testing as well. It wasn't as well publicized, so people didn't know it unless they called the phone number looking for a test. If they called the phone number looking for a test, they got a test as quickly as anyone else in the county did. And if you look at those zip code maps, you can see that we were testing aggressively in North County, and we were able to find a lot of people who were impacted. The criteria for getting a test wasn't based on where you lived. It was based on if you had chronic medical problems. And we know that there's a lot of people in North County that had chronic medical problems, and that's why they were tested more frequently, and that's why we have more, we've identified more people who need help and who have been sick. And we see that in the people who enter the hospital. A lot of folks with chronic medical problems who haven't historically had access to care. So what this crisis has done is it's shown a spotlight on what those of us that have been in government for the past 2 decades have known, is that we have a real problem with disparities in access to healthcare. And that's why I've always supported Medicaid expansion. Since I was a member of the state legislature, I voted against the cuts, and I've been a vocal supporter of the Medicaid expansion ballot that will be before us here in this election year. But we know this is important, and the COVID-19 virus has really shown us where our disparities are. That's why we have to support our federally qualified health centers. We have to get better access to care where it's needed. And I had a conversation yesterday with our regional health leaders in our hospital systems about how we can have a plan moving forward. Right now we're focused on testing, treatment, isolation, quarantine, and support services, wraparound services for affected individuals and affected communities. And that's going to be the primary focus of our health department moving forward.
Now, Sam, I want to bring in Dr. Jason Purnell into this conversation as well. You stated that you brought him in early, and we appreciate that foresight. Jason, how are you doing this morning?
I'm blessed. I woke up this morning in a warm bed, in a comfortable house, in good health.
No, and we're glad to see you and know that you're part of the team that's moving forward to make sure that we are safe and secure, especially. Jason, what is your take on the process that we are going through at this time with St. Louis County and our overall health and testing that we have going on as well?
Well, what I said to several leaders was, when we see a disproportionate burden, we need to have a disproportionate response. I've called it an asymmetrical response, and that's what equity looks like. The analogy that I've used is if there are 2 houses on the block that are on fire, you don't go to each house and ask, do you need some water? You put the 2 houses that are on fire out with all the water that you have. And I think the deployment of testing resources, particularly in partnership with federally qualified health centers like Affinia, and also the work that St. Louis County has done to expand access to testing sites in the city of St. Louis as well, are exactly the right response to this. But that disproportionate distribution of resources has to include the resources that help our communities to recover from this crisis as well. We know that even before this crisis, African-American communities and communities that were low to moderate income bore a disproportionate burden of all kinds of chronic diseases and other challenges. So there's a sense in which these maps of zip codes that we're seeing with a disproportionate burden of COVID-19 are not surprising to those of us who've been looking at maps that show rates of poverty, rates of other chronic diseases, and quite frankly, a legacy of residential segregation in the St. Louis region that separates people from opportunity in a structural and systematic way. But what I will say is that I've been gratified by the coordination and the coming together across actually 5 counties through the regional response team, which is what I'm helping to lead. We have representatives from nonprofit organizations, from several governments across those 5 counties, which include St. Charles, St. Louis County, the city of St. Louis, and then Madison and St. Clair counties on the Illinois side. We've got philanthropy, we've got the business community represented around that table. And our goal is really how do we address the needs of the most vulnerable populations within the context of this pandemic? Our work has been around trying to coordinate around our unhoused neighbors who we know are facing particular challenges and are particularly vulnerable. We've also been working very closely with the Regional Response Fund, which is a collaborative fund set up through the St. Louis Community Foundation, and we'll be launching next week in partnership with the United Way and several other partners like the Integrated Health Network, a response to homebound older adults and individuals with disabilities, and making sure that there are dedicated resources to get to those vulnerable populations. We've coordinated around school food programs. We've helped to coordinate partners around distance learning and technology. So it really does take all of us working together. No one institution can do this. No one jurisdiction can do this. No one organization can do this by themselves. And we've got to really flex some civic muscle that isn't always present in St. Louis, given our fragmentation and given our history of not always coordinating and collaborating well. But I'm gratified by what I am seeing.
No, I'm happy to hear that, and happy that you're a part of the team as well. That does kind of give us some reassurance that, again, it's not just, you know, everybody else kind of taking care of us, that we are in the middle of this. Sam, I did have some questions that did come from our viewers. One of them that I wanted to touch, well, I have a couple of them. Basically what Quita Stevens, she is the president of the Black Nurses Association of Greater St. Louis. The first question stated to you, and the second one will be for Dr. Purnell. Are there conversations that occur between county executives throughout the St. Louis metropolitan area? And if so, why are we not continuing the social distancing as a state? We do not have walls that separate us from county to county, so it still puts us all at risk, with others are allowed to return to work, social activities without mandated guidelines to follow, such as being required to wear masks and gloves at all times while in the community.
Yeah, so we're reviewing all of our social distancing policies. We did allow essential businesses to continue to operate in St. Louis County during the stay-at-home order. And those essential businesses were expected to adopt social distancing guidelines when they were open. We're talking about a transition plan in St. Louis County to a reopening plan, but we also have to recognize that St. Louis County is much different than the rest of the state. We have 40% of the coronavirus infections, COVID-19 infections of the state of Missouri, and St. Louis City and County together has 60%. So we know that we were impacted much more greatly, and that we have to continue to watch very closely, and we're on a different timeline to relax our safety rules. Having said that, social distancing will be a big part of the upcoming education campaign. We know that we have to make sure that we reinforce social distancing in all businesses, essential and non-essential, and that includes wearing a mask when you are not able to be 6 feet away from someone. And staying 6 feet away from someone is absolutely a priority moving forward. Until we get through this pandemic, which means until we have a vaccine widely available, we have good medical therapy, social distancing is really the best way to fight this virus. So absolutely moving forward, we will talk about social distancing guidelines for all businesses. We will be helping them be successful. We will have some educational materials for them. And we encourage everyone to wear a mask when they're out and they're not able to stay 6 feet away from someone.
Well, I definitely appreciate the conversation moving forward, especially when we have information coming out, you know, daily about how social distancing might change. I know I was watching the news the other day, and it's saying that, you know, that maybe the 6 feet isn't the maximum amount of space that we need to be distancing. So I hope that that they take those things in consideration as well.
Yeah, I think moving forward, a lot of what we do and a lot of our success in the community will be based on decisions that individuals make to help themselves.
No, totally agree on that one. Dr. Purnell, the second question was, why are providers only allowed to order COVID testing for 2 patients a day and being forced to turn away other patients that have tested negative for other things and clearly have all of the symptoms. Can you speak to that, do you think?
Not really. Those guidelines are being made by others, and I haven't been involved in sort of the decision making around testing. I'll defer to the medical doctor on some of those questions.
No, and that's a one that I'm starting to kind of pay attention to as far as the cost of testing as well. I know that some hospitals, I know that was an initial question when it first sprouted up, if we would have to have this test done, how much it would actually cost. And I know that for some people that varies and changes. Am I correct on that? Can anyone come and speak to the cost aspect of it?
Well, we don't want to see anyone not get a test for COVID-19 because of cost. And that's a national strategy. That's our strategy here in St. Louis County. All insurances should cover this. We know there are people in our community that don't have insurance, and that's where our FQHCs and our public health department is going to step up. The guidelines for receiving a test, initially, the national guidelines and state guidelines were for people who would most likely be hurt by COVID-19. Those with chronic medical problems receive tests first. Those with symptoms but were otherwise healthy did not necessarily have easy access to a test. That's changing, and we believe we are very close to the setting where we can start to test everyone with symptoms. And then moving forward past that in the near future, we hope to be able to test people who don't have symptoms, but just were around someone who was COVID-19 positive. We know we need more tests in our country, in our community. And as we get more tests, we'll follow the public health guidance on expanding who gets access beyond the most vulnerable populations to everyone who has symptoms, and then even people without symptoms.
Now, how are we obtaining tests at this point in time if there are not enough? I know going into the conversation also vaccines and antibody testing as well. How accessible are those at this point in time from your standpoint?
Well, a vaccine is probably a year away. And we know when we get a vaccine, it's a game changer in the fight against this virus. Until then, we are competing aggressively for tests. There are two types of tests in a general sense. There's tests for the virus, which means you would be acutely infected, and then tests for an antibody to the virus, which in a general sense means you were exposed and you've most likely recovered. It's important to know who's been exposed, because that, we believe, will represent some sort of immunity, and that's important to know who in your population is immune, what percentage, and individuals. But the test is, we're buying tests wherever we can get them. On Monday, I asked our county health department to open up a request for bids without a limit and accept bids for as many tests as we could, as people would bid for. We want many different suppliers. We don't want just one supply chain. We want to have many sources. And we believe that process will be closed. It was either closed Friday or Monday, and then we'll begin making those purchases. We're certainly willing to try and make those tests available in the community with relaxed guidelines. The hospital systems are also aggressively testing in the community. They initially led this effort, and they had better access to testing supplies because of their normal supply chain as a hospital. The FQHCs more recently have had access to testing, and they've got involved very heavily, and we're very glad to have their partnership. And then the private labs are starting to step up with greater access. There will be many, many different access points for testing moving forward.
No, when we appreciate that, we truly appreciate that. Now, Dr. Purnell, you might be able to answer this question. It was brought to us by Jessica Roberts, and the pandemic has clearly highlighted healthcare disparities among minority groups like African Americans. Where should we put our advocacy efforts as it relates to this area?
You know, it's interesting that the question was posed in terms of healthcare disparities. There are certainly healthcare disparities in terms of access to healthcare, but what people often fail to recognize is that healthcare only accounts for about 10 to 20% of people's health outcomes. So even if we had the best access to healthcare for everyone, which we don't, we'd put about a 10 to 20% dent in what we call premature mortality, which is dying before we would expect someone to die. The rest of that is really about social, economic, and environmental factors. And the advocacy needs to be around equalizing, well, not even equalizing, having a more equitable distribution of those resources. So when we look at wealth gaps, when we look at income gaps, when we look at, I very rarely have seen an unemployment rate for African Americans that's less than twice the rate for the general population. When we look at things like school completion, that's where our advocacy efforts need to be. In addition to things like Medicaid expansion, healthcare is necessary, but not sufficient to close the kinds of gaps that we see in terms of health outcomes. And that's what we've been saying for almost 7 years now, following the For the Sake of All report, and then following that report with really a companion piece that talks about how residential segregation organizes some of those inequities, how a history that goes over a century in St. Louis of racially segregating people and then removing resources and disinvesting in parts of our region where African Americans disproportionately live impacts everything from your access to a grocery store to your access to high quality education, to jobs, to any number of resources that have an impact on health. So when we think about health, the knee-jerk reaction is to think about healthcare, and healthcare is important. It's just not enough if what we're talking about is more equitable health outcomes.
Now, with that said, would that be a good enough reason to fill out the census and vote?
Absolutely. Give out the census.
I'll bring it around real quick. Just want to bring it around real quick. Just
absolutely.
You know, focus your advocacy. Focus it on making sure that you.
I tell people all the time, I vote every chance I get. I don't care if there's one thing on the ballot. I vote because too many people fought and died for me to have the right to vote, for me to sit at home and not vote. People got beat over the head. They got blown up. They got shot and killed so that I could have the right to vote. And I don't ever take that right for granted.
No, and I believe that you just said it succinctly. If we worry about these, I wouldn't say minute things, but they're all dependent on how we basically live our everyday lives, and the ability to do that in an equitable sense, as well as being able to have these opportunities and these resources. And that collectively happens when we're able to be counted, whether it be with voting or with the census, and especially when it comes to the questions of our healthcare in the areas in which we disproportionately have those things. Councilwoman Michelle Gray, did you want to speak on any of this? I know that this is St. Louis County is definitely your stomping grounds. Were there any other questions that anyone else had kind of to speak on?
Unless someone has something specific for me, I did want to reiterate there are more testing sites available in North County. I don't know, and again, that can be found on the website. If you call the number, you will be referred to one of those sites, so you can choose which one you would like to participate or utilize. So you cannot just go to a site, especially not a mobile site, should I say. You have to call first and be referred to one of the sites. Of course, hospitals, if you have an emergency, you go to the emergency room as usual. And if they think you need to be tested out, they will.
Okay.
I did want to share a couple of resources with folks who are listening. One is called, and I don't know if it's been mentioned in the conversation yet, it's called Prepare STL, which is a joint campaign between St. Louis County's Department of Public Health, the City Department of Health, the Regional Health Commission, the Coalition of Community Health Workers, Alive and Well, several other organizations. The work that Prepare STL has been doing has been absolutely vital. One, it's a communications campaign, and it's a joint communications campaign, and people can visit the website at preparestl.com. But the truly dynamic piece of it is that there's canvassing that is happening through Prepare STL. In fact, I'm going to go on a canvas this afternoon and join some folks in putting posters and other information about this virus and about where people can get resources in particularly hard hit parts of the St. Louis region. And these are community health workers and organizers and everyday individuals who are donning their PPE and going out and delivering information where we know in particular vulnerable populations are likely to be. So they've hit gas stations and beauty supplies and check cashing places and convenience stores, getting the information to our community in a direct way. And you know, people like Rebecca Bennett and Dr. Lori Punch and Brittini Gray and Von Treese McDowell, and all these folks have stood up this sophisticated effort because of their dedication and their commitment to our community. And I just can't say enough good things about it. Dr. Lori Punch is putting together PPE kits at the T on Del Mar, and also going out, you know, in addition to working in the ICU, going out and doing medical checks for unhoused populations downtown, as is Dr. Barbara Luty. These are everyday heroes. They inspire me, and people need to know about it. The other thing I want to say real quickly is there's a website whose address is stlresponse.org, has a lot of different information on it, collected all in one place. There's a kind of crowdsourced resource guide that's on there that was developed by actually a member of our regional response team, coordinating team named Grace Kyung, who's a remarkable human being. And if folks want to learn more about the COVID-19 regional response team, our website is c19rrt.org. And I've put all of these things in the chat as well.
Thank you, Dr. Purnell. Thank you so much about that. And speaking on Prepare STL, not trying to toot my station's own horn, but if you get an opportunity to check out my blog at 955thelou.com, I have different interviews with different members of Prepare STL if you're curious to exactly how that process goes through. Dr. Lori Punch is one of my favorite people in the whole entire world. Incredible people who are on the front line and who are seeing disparities every day and who are actively out there working. And Prepare STL has along with STL Mutual Aid, have just been incredible organizations that are really out there on the front line, helping our neighbors and communities. And I thoroughly reiterate the point that Dr. Purnell said, was just basically utilizing these resources because they're out here, St. Louis. They truly are out here. Executive Sam Page and Dr. Jason Purnell, I thank you so much for continuing the conversation. I ask that you kind of just hold back for one quick second because we are going to move to our next point. I told you these 2 hours are going to go quick because we have so much great information, and the professionals that we have on here, I am so proud to be a part of the conversation. But the last point of conversation is family resources. We have State Representative Mike Person on the call, as well as Theta Person, and also State Representative James Mosley and Angela Mosley, who have been waiting so patiently. I thank you all for being here and continuing to help our community out. But with family resources, we have State Services and Unemployment with State Representative Mike Persons. How are you doing, sir? Uh-oh. You don't see him on there? Okay.
He was, but no.
No. Okay, well, we'll go on. State Representative James Mosley and Angela Mosley, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I am blessed. What is that? What is that on your ceiling?
It's it's the state seal.
Hey! I was like, well, my goodness. I was like, that's 30. I was trying to figure it out for the last hour. I'm like, what is this? We get distracted easily over here. But no, with our family resources, what are you seeing, I guess, us moving forward? What are we looking forward to, and how can we help our families out here?
Well, I guess I could speak to that. I'm Veta Person, the St. Louis County Executive Community Engagement Coordinator.
Yes.
And if people go to stlcorona.com, you'll find a plethora of resources to help people in our region. If you text St. Louis Co alert to 67283, you can receive information via text. And if you call the 314-615-2660 COVID-19 hotline, that can help you too. But on this website at stlcorona.com, there's a search box on there, and there's just like so much information that maybe a lot of people are unaware of. But the search box, you just put in what you're looking for. If you're looking for food, you can type that in the box, and it'll tell you all of the food that's located in the community around your area. You'll put in your zip code, for example, and it'll just pop up all these spots around your area. You can find, like in our families, we have people who are business owners, and a lot of business information was shared already, but you do have the small business relief information on here, internet access. Maybe some of the families are having issues with their children getting online. There's information there for that. COVID-19 fact sheets. And like I said, there's just so much here, educational resources and websites that are free, e-learning resources. You name it, it's there. And also this is a very stressful time for families. And I'm sure that State Representative Jay Mosley and his wife, Angela Mosley, can speak more about that since they have children, but there are resources available and hotlines available to assist if needed.
Now there was, the question on Facebook, how can we get telehealth tools and resources to the elders locked in their homes? That, do we have anything that is comparable to be able to help folks, or anything resources that we know of at this time that can help in that facility?
Well, I would say to check out the stlcorona.com website, but if they need personal assistance, my information has been provided via chat box. I can be reached at 314-615-6685, or they can email me at tperson, like individuals advocating for those individuals. They can email me at tperson@stlouisco.com. I'm willing to do the work for anyone in the community if they need. If they don't have the time to sit down and put in whatever they're looking for in the search box, I'm willing to do that, because we perish for a lack of knowledge, and we want to make sure that everyone has everything that they need.
No, and you're absolutely right. And I want to re-stress to everyone who is viewing our Facebook Live today, again, the resources are out there. Contrary to popular, there should be nothing that you lack of. I know that there's a lot going on in the sense of there being a disparity, and there not being as much as we should have, and we usually do have, because of the stay-at-home order as far as the COVID-19 virus. But you have, individuals like Veta and of course your state representatives who are in constant communication with federal and state governments, who can definitely speak to those things. So please don't think that you're by yourself. Exactly. And you can't get these things. And as Veta just mentioned, that was one of the questions that we had on Facebook. But to the Mosleys, I know that graduations, at home school have been truly affected. I can imagine what your children are going through and how it's affecting them. I know I speak about mental health all the time on my show. And again, trying to push it real quick, it's just, if you have any questions about any mental health facilitators out there that you can call, you can check out my blog at isisjones@955blue.com. I've been speaking to everybody, because mental health at this point in time is so important when we're in this position. But to the Mosleys, like, how has that personally been for you all? What have you been seeing?
Well, I have a senior at McClure North High School that is it's affecting him, and I know he's a little depressed. Not I wouldn't say depressed, but disappointed in the fact that he's not able to have a ceremony at this point, and prom, and the things that are traditional senior activities.
These are major things, in their livelihoods. Think about, how big of these events were when we were growing up. Prom dressing, going out there to pick your tuxedo out, your prom dress. These were all rites of passage, so to speak. Yeah. So this is being disrupted on a number of different levels. They're talking about different colleges that, won't be able to really process and get the monies that they need to be able to continue education because of, the social distancing and, with a senior, what is the next step for him in the sense of even pursuing college?
Exactly. That's a struggle. Normally around the time seniors are visiting the schools that they're going to be attending, and that's not happening right now. There's a lot of roadblocks in the way right now. So we're trying to encourage him. He plays basketball. He can't even practice on his skills. To prepare himself for the college environment. So it's. I know it's wearing on him a little bit. And I know he's looking forward to all this ending. We just don't have a time frame when that will be.
Yeah, our biggest problem with our youth is just getting them to stay home. Forgive me, I missed your cue, but I was expressing to Jay problems I was having with our kids. Hey, just stay at home. And he mentions to me about having his own kids, encouraging them to stay at home. So it's like they're not following the guidelines like their parents are. But I'm sure that's something that we're all dealing with right now. So.
It's our children, our elderly, who constantly want to run out the house. And I'm starting to realize, these 80-year-olds like, we ain't gonna sit here and worry about it. They they want to get in the car and just go, But it always kind of, I feel for them, and I feel for anyone who is socially and a social butterfly of census, because it does keep you from, and I think the one thing, I don't know if any of you have experienced this, as we start to loosen a little bit and we started to speak on the aspect of opening up, the city and allowing people to get back to a sense of normalcy, there's almost a kind of apprehension and a fear of anxiety, a little bit of stepping out there. Right. And what does that look like when you start to consider your own healthcare issues? It makes you a little bit more apprehensive about getting out there, and I think that's something that needs to be spoken to moving forward, because at some point in time we do have to get back out.
And particularly when all the experts are saying there will be a new rush of new cases simply because we are going to be engaging in the near future. So that's expected. And the history of pandemics has shown that there have been second waves and then third waves beyond that. So we can expect there to be a spike in cases. How we react to that, I don't know. We're kind of up in arms with our state legislature so far as what the governor is doing and not doing. And I simply asked him, well, aren't we going to have more testing before we come back to the Capitol? And he told me blatantly, very blatantly, no, we aren't. So we're like stepping in this building, basically flying blind. We have no idea of what is going to happen. And they have decided, oh, well, we're simply going to adjust as we go, and regardless of what that's going to look like. There's a gentleman named Joe Runyons who was infected, and we all self-quarantined for 2 weeks. Well, Mr. Runyons is better, he's at home, but he's still infectious. He's still infectious. So we've done talk about doing the antibody testing, which they are offering to us in the state capitol. That's not really going to say whether or not we can be reinfected or whether or not we are still infectious. So there's so much unknown there, which is basically flying blind, and the resources haven't been there for a lot of testing. So not to side with the governor about not emphasizing the testing, but the resources simply hadn't been there. And at this point, we have tested less than 1% of the Missouri population right now. So
well,
can't
I think that's a good reason why.
Without at least 1% of people tested. So that's the predicament that we're in. We don't know what that's going to look like, and neither do they. But they've made a decision to restart our economy, our government, and just see what happens. So you can understand the frustrations that we have in Jeff City.
Sorry, no, I can see it on your face, right? I can see it on your face right now. And trust me, everyone out here is feeling the same way because there's so much confusion in that aspect of, well, what does that mean? Are you just kind of throwing us out here? Just to kind of, and especially if it's disproportionately affecting African Americans, you kind of feel like, okay, what does that mean? But Theta, you had something that you wanted to touch on?
Yes, I was just saying that's a reason why we need to heed the warnings of County Executive Dr. Page and other officials when they're saying something. Heed those warnings and do what is proper, and also to refer to the updates that are provided through the stlcorona.com website. Like I said, there's a host of information there, but to stay updated, since everything's changing so fast, we really need for everyone to go there and seek out that information. And if they need some assistance, I am available.
Yes, I'm glad she mentioned that because I did want to chime in, but I was hesitant. Right, we have to really focus on social distancing. We need to wash our hands especially when we leave our homes, wear a mask and wash your hands as often as possible for 20 seconds. So that's very important. Dr. Page, I would like to personally say, and I think I speak for most of my constituents, if not all, we support the shut-in. As opposed to a lot of the other areas, we support it. I won't even say other areas. There are a group of people who are giving or protesting, but I think we really appreciate that he is stuck to his guns as a doctor and he's doing the right thing. So I really wanted to stress that and to, again, stress safety when we leave our homes, more importantly, and who you let in your home. We shouldn't let a lot of people come to our house. I mean, personally, it should be just your family who you live with. Even my mom, I don't go in her house. I take her what she needs. I leave it at the door. I hate that. I try to sit there and talk to her at the door for a little while so she gets a little bit of social action. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
But it's important, and we don't. In fact, I was talking to a hospital administrator, and I don't want to keep going over one real quickly. He said after Easter, there was a spike. And like they said, it could be 7 to 2 weeks. And they started seeing a spike after about 7 days to 14 days. And he thinks that was one of the reasons why. People thought it was okay to have family over because of the holiday. But remember, you can be asymptomatic. You may not even, as a young person, especially a young, healthy person, you can make your grandmother, your mom sick. And it's important, if you do have to go see her, wear your mask. I know people need assistance, wear a mask because you may not even know that you are carrying the virus.
Right.
No, and we have to be very careful when we do take things to my mom. She's a high-risk person. And for me, I do go in the house, so I have to take my shoes off at the door. I wipe down every item that I've purchased for her. before I take it in our house and take everything in one at a time. It's hard on my back because I'm standing and all that. But we have to be careful with ourselves getting infected because we don't want to infect our mother that we have to help. So it's important to stay healthy.
Yes, I don't want people to forget that the virus is still in the community. So as people are going about their daily lives, like today there's a Urban League distribution at Old Jamestown Mall from 12 to 3 for those people who need that resource. When you're out there, you have to heed those social distancing warnings and make sure that you're doing everything to keep not only yourself, but the community safe. But we have to heed those warnings and do what's in our best interest. And doing these things are in our best interest.
I don't think we can overstate the fact that under present circumstances, I don't think we can overemphasize the fact that we have the right person heading our county, that is a physician and does have at least some basis or well, what better term? I can't think of a better term to use, but someone who is somewhat qualified to at least have an understanding or a scaffolding of how we should navigate or proceed henceforth, considering what we're going under. I mean, there's a lot that we don't know, but it's at least good to have somebody that has some idea, profile, or perspective of what we're dealing with here. So that's a good thing. I did want to share some information with you. I don't know how much of this we have covered so far as employment, so far as people getting some kind of subsistence from the government, but the Missouri Department of Labor and Industrial Relations, they are encouraging self-employed, the gig workers and independent contractors whose businesses have been impacted by the coronavirus to apply for unemployment insurance. And under the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program, those who qualify will be eligible for weekly benefit payments of between $133 and $320 per week, plus $800 in federal supplemental coverage. The number for the Missouri Department of Labor and Industrial Relations is 1-800-735-2966. And you can also go to their website and all this information is available to you. We've probably already given the number out for the CARES Act, but I'm going to give it again. It's 202-224-5175. And you should be able to navigate from that number down to what is particularly relative to you and what your needs are, considering this pandemic that we're going through.
Hey, Representative Persons, thank you so much. Now, I told you again, this time would be running quickly, and we have, just ran through all the information. I would advise everyone who's watching on Facebook to share the post. It will be up and the information will still be there. We will continue to post all the links and websites that you can utilize. Please do not use the excuse that the resources are not out there. Your county officials are really working hard to make sure that all the information is accessible. But we do have to close the conversation down and continue, because I know a lot of folks have to get out there to the Urban League's events, and we want to definitely help out those of our folks who are out there in St. Louis County. But I want to thank everyone, Yolonda Henderson, State Representative Mike Person, also Ms. Thayer Person as well, Councilwoman Rochelle Walton Gray, the Mosleys, State Representative Mosleys, also St. Louis County Executive Dr. Sam Page. We thank you profusely for being a part of this conversation. Again, we love the fact that you all are working for us. And I truly have to say thank you. As moving back from Birmingham, Alabama to here and back to St. Louis, I feel better about the outcome of where we're moving to because of all of you on this feed today. And I thank you so very much for allowing non-Kappa to be a part of the conversation. But I wanted to introduce you all to Anita Blackman. She is the Vice President of Gamma Omega. And we have some closing remarks and some more information about how the ladies of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Gamma Omega Chapter are really putting themselves forward and being what their sisterhood is all about, community and making life better for all of us.
Good morning. Thank you. I would like to personally take this opportunity to thank all of our guests this morning for taking the time out of their busy schedules to speak to the community in response to the COVID-19 and how it has affected the St. Louis metropolitan area. So if we were all together, but since you can see me, I'm going to give you my round of applause. Special thanks to you, Isis Jones, our MC, for always being a smiling force on the airwaves and providing information that you need to know. There was a lot of information provided for those of you watching today, and we hope that you can share it with others. Case in point, as a reminder today, the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis is handing out food and toiletries from noon to 3 p.m. at the old Jamestown Mall in St. Louis County. As you know, everyone has had to change the way that they do things, from schools, small and large businesses, local government, and even Alpha Kappa Alpha as an organization. 2020 will definitely be known as the year of technology. Please follow us on our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and on YouTube. We have daily posts that provide information for our target programming, such as showing support for our HBCUs, health and wellness, entrepreneurship and economic empowerment, the Black arts movement, and Harlem Renaissance, as well as global impact with assistance to our local refugee population. This weekend, we are excited to launch our Go for Black Businesses campaign, where we will feature Black-owned businesses for our social media pages in an effort to generate more revenue for their business. We know that this pandemic is deeply impacting our entire economy, but it's having an even more adverse effect on small Black businesses. So please follow us on social media at AKAGOSTL so that you can go for Black businesses and help ensure that they not only survive, but thrive during this uncertain time. If you are a business owner or know someone who is interested in being featured in our campaign, please send us a picture along with a brief description of the business and how consumers can reach out to you. This information can be sent to akagoprograms@gmail.com. That's akagoprograms@gmail.com, or call us at 314-282-8018. Special thanks to our chapter members, Ms. Melanie Davis, Alidra Allen, Joan Hubbard, and Tracy Jeffries for being a part of the conversation, and Angie Hayes for providing the social media platform for us to share this much needed information to the community. This is a special year for Gamma Omega, as we will be turning 100 years young on December 2nd, 2020. It has been difficult to celebrate this accomplishment, as we were planning to have events all year long in celebration of this milestone. So I thank Ms. Coretta Bozeman, the chairman, who has been navigating these changes. So please save the date. On December 2nd, we will host a public meeting to highlight several of our local partners, and on December 5th, we will have our 100th anniversary gala celebration. And last but not least, let me personally thank Ms. Kimberly Beck for her leadership as president of our chapter during this challenging time. So lastly, enjoy your Saturday, enjoy the sun because it's going to be warm today. Check out the websites previously mentioned by our guest, as they contain a wealth of resources and support for all. If you missed any of the information presented today, you can see this broadcast on our YouTube page later today, or review the information in the comment section of this feed. So in closing, on behalf of the nearly 400 members of Gamma Omega chapter, we want you to know that from the 314 to the 618, that we are all in this together. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greetings. Be
Have a good day.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Votes. Get them votes.
Yes. Fill out the census and don't forget to vote.
Yeah, riots and tearing up stuff, but don't show up on voting day. You did all that carrying on for nothing. You know,
Right.
voting day,
Right.
crickets, you know.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, y'all.